We live?
We are live. Let me just get back to the Zoom. Oh my goodness, let me find us here just a second.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our meeting. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the First Peoples and their ancestors who are entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the county is committed to working with Indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. Our first item is adoption of the agenda.
So that's moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears and seconded by Councillor Fowler that the agenda, and there is also an addendum there now, which was the briefing that we added for the February 5th, 2025 meeting of the Governance Review Committee be adopted.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest on any item on today's agenda by any member of the committee? Seeing none, we'll note that in the minutes. Adoption of the minutes.
Moved by Councillor Fowler and seconded by Councillor Greenwood Spears that the minutes of the Governance Review Committee meeting held January 7th be adopted.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. All right, items of business, staff briefing. Jeanette, you're on.
I can pull that up for you. Oh, okay.
This is why senior citizens shouldn't work electronics. Okay, so thank you to the committee, and I do apologize for this missing going out on the agenda on Friday, but we did feel that it was really important to provide this briefing to the committee because all of these three policies that are on the agenda today are so intertwined with each other that to look at them one at a time might be just a little bit difficult. So there's just a little bit of a pictorial here. So the three policies that we are looking at today are the sale and disposition of land, the delegation of authority, and the land use policy. And as we can see here, the easements or any delegated authority really falls into all of those three policies. So they're just so interconnected that we wanted to go through them one at a time. So the first one is that sale and disposition of land policy. We discussed this at the last meeting, And this is, of course, the first one out of the gate. As you can see from the report that was on the agenda, there were no public comments received. It did go up onto our Engage Frontenac site, but we have not received any public comments on it. The key things there on that policy are the easements. They're no longer considered to be a disposition of land. So that will be sort of delegated to staff. And then again, the process, another discussion at that meeting was the process or the requirement for applications. Like what is the process that we're going to take to ensure that favoritism isn't played or anything else? So that's captured in the land use policy, and we'll look at that a little later as well. And then the other comment received from the committee was the public notice requirements. So we have left that general to just say that it's going to follow our public notice policy. And I think I did mention in the report itself that that policy will be one of the next ones to be looked at as well, because it is quite old as well. The definition of a third party, and through discussions, yes, there you can Google search it and find one. We looked at several, well, I think there was 13 or 14 that I did look at, and no other municipal bylaw really identified what they consider to be a third party. And if I understand from the discussions at the last meeting, this stemmed around the definition that we had for an agency, which would have been, for example, if we're selling land to the Communal Services Corporation to put on communal services, that would be considered an agency. But then where does third party sit into that? So I couldn't find one in any other bylaws, but of course, when that report comes up for consideration, we can certainly, do the standard one that's in a Google search. I'll leave that to the committee. Just from my perspective, I couldn't find one in any other municipal policy. So we would like to add to the recommendation here. So at the last meeting, we talked about a sale and disposition of land bylaw that would cover everything. But now what staff are looking at is that perhaps we do a sale, disposition, and land use bylaw, where we now have two schedules to it. So the first schedule would be Schedule A, which is the actual sale and disposition of the land. Schedule B would be the land use policy, so that all of these policies are in one place, easily found, and they're all in one location. And it also gives the county an opportunity in the future, if there are other things that need to be added to how we look at the sale, disposition, and use of our land. So that was the only quick change that we talked about there. The next policy that's on the agenda is the delegation of authority. So just to give the committee a little bit of a background about where this comes from, it's found under Section 23 of the Municipal Act, which gives council the authority to delegate to another person. The scope of those powers are found under Section 2. So as you can see there are some rules that do apply when you do delegate authority. It may be revoked at any time. That's without given. It states there that it shall not be limited to, it shall not limit the right to revoke the delegation beyond the term of council. So each new term of council, and this council will recall that at its December meeting, it did once again approve those delegated authorities that are under the bylaw, because it does have to be for each term of council. The next one there, it can stipulate that only the delegate can exercise the delegated power, or that both the municipality and the delegate can exercise the power. So currently, an example of this would be the delegation of authority that we have under the Planning Act, where the Director of Planning and Economic Development is delegated the authority of final plan of subdivision, but it does state in there that any member of council, if they choose, can pull that up to the council floor rather than it sitting with the director, or the director can bring it up to the council floor if he feels that it should be a council decision, or the applicant themselves can ask that it be brought up to the council floor. So there is that ability in the delegation of authority bylaw to not only leave it with the set person, but that there's a number of opportunities there. And then the last one is it may be made with conditions and limits set by council, including procedures that the delegate is required to follow, and the accountability of the delegate and the transparency of the delegate's actions. So an example of this would be during COVID. We delegated some authority to the CAO in case council was not able to meet and business still had to continue. So that would be an example of that. Another example would have been several years ago when you're in lame duck and you actually lose your authority to do certain things. We delegated to the CAO to hire the new administrator at Fairmount Home because business still has to continue. So that would be an example of those limited conditions under delegated authority. So powers that cannot be delegated. So as you can see there, there's some things that you can't delegate. You cannot delegate the power to appoint or remove from office an officer of the municipality. So officers of the municipality are considered your treasurer or CAO, or sorry, treasurer and clerk. A building official would be at the township level. Your chief building official is an office of the municipality. The power to pass a bylaw under section 400.1 or parts 5, 9, 9.1 and X. So section 400 is basically taxes, I believe. So 400 is to impose transient accountability account taxes, and part 5 and the other ones are to deal with taxation. So you can't delegate those authorities. The power to incorporate corporations, the power to adopt an official plan lies with council, similar to zoning lies with council. The powers to pass bylaws under subsection 108, 1.2, and 110, 3, 6, 7, and 7.1. These are small business provisions that are provided where you can provide some type of financial assistance. So an example of that would be, for example, a municipal facilities. And then lastly, the power to adopt community improvement plans lies with council, and we can't see the last one there, but any other power that might be prescribed in the act. So the next is our, sorry, Sonia, I have the mouse here. There we go. Yes. So our current delegations. So currently, and these are all identified in the report itself, but the warden is delegated the head of the municipality, and the municipal clerk is assigned those powers under MFIPA. The clerk is also designated as the contact person under both PHIPA and the Ombudsman's Act. The Director of Planning and Economic Development currently is delegated to authorize final approval of plans of subdivision and condominium, as well as part lot control approval. And then lastly there, the Integrity Commissioner is delegated the authority of council's powers to impose penalties for a contravention of the Code of Conduct. And I believe we spoke at this at the last meeting. So if there is a code of a complaint made to the Integrity Commissioner and he recommends a penalty, he's the one imposing it. It's not council's prerogative to do that. So just the recommendations that we're making under the delegation of authority bylaw. This is really coming to council because we do have to respect and understand that we now live in a digital age and the public expects swift outcomes. And sometimes when you're sitting with things at the council floor, it takes time. It takes time to get things ready. It takes time to get things on an agenda. If you're late by one day, it delays it another month to get it on the council agenda. So we do respect that we do live in that digital age, and we have to respect that our procedures can no longer really be what they were 50, 60, 70 years ago. So this really respects that we are in that digital age, that, you know, investors, developers, and all of those sorts of stakeholders, they do expect instant decisions. So let's give it to them where we can, as well as being as accountable and transparent to the public that we are, and still respecting that their final decision and authorities do sit with the municipal council. So some of those proposed amendments that we're looking at, some of them are housekeeping amendments. So this is just a change in title from community planner to manager of community planner. There's other ones as well. It's just updating your strategic priorities. They've changed since the last one was done. And then delegations under the Planning Act for extension of draft approval of plans of subdivision as well as condominiums. So as noted in the report, when council approves a draft plan of subdivision, it's for 3 years. We do respect that sometimes, given today's market, today's age, that it's difficult to find professional help. It's difficult to meet some of those conditions, so extensions sometimes are required. And again, if that 1-day deadline is missed, then I believe, and Sonia can speak to this, the entire draft plan falls apart. Is that correct, if we miss those deadlines?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So under the Planning Act, if the draft plan lapses, there is no automatic renewal. So right now, we require them to come in at least 60 days in advance. But then we have to do our review, take it to the township and get it on county council before that deadline is up. If we're lucky, people give us more than 60 days notice. But if something happens and it lapses, they have to go through the entire application process again.
Thank you. This was the point that actually caught my attention the most in that, because sitting also on the PDAC for the economic development, it was brought to my attention early on that some plans get renewed on a 2-year basis for virtually decades, it seems. So with this, I look at it that it should potentially come back to council and that for that particular aspect, because what we're allowing is developers that can flip between the next owner, it seems, but also delay unduly in that until 10 years down the road, and no one else can have the opportunity in that. So I think there's been potentially a bit of delay that was built in all the way along. So from my perspective, in that if somebody is asking for that 2-year extension, it should be only 1 2-year extension, that with the exception of something like COVID that could derail something significantly. But to hear about, proposals that have basically tied up land for 10 and 15 years, I don't think that's reasonable.
Maybe Sonia could speak to that. I know the ones that we've done, there have been good reasons why we extended them.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. It's all really site-specific and application-specific, really. What we look for when somebody comes to us for an extension really is, have they actively been working on fulfilling the conditions, right? So very often, if they're 50% of the way through, but they haven't been able to get a well driller or something like that. So there often the delays, obviously COVID was a unique instance. But even with the increase in development, it's difficult to get trades and technical professionals. So what we do watch for is, I think we probably have a couple of files where there are people who got draft approval and are actively trying to sell the property and not fulfill the conditions of approval. And I know probably more than one instance where we've had conversations with them. And I think one got a 3-year extension and that had to be approved by council, where we've said to them, we said, you need to show progress, right? If you come back 3 years from now and you've accomplished none of the conditions and you haven't been able to sell it, then there are some that are getting dated, and the concern becomes is all of the technical studies that were done become dated, right? Provincial policy and legislation and local policy and legislation becomes dated, and all of a sudden you run into a situation where you have something that wouldn't necessarily meet today's standards. So it's not an automatic you get X number of times. It's really more about what is the development about. Why are they having difficulty fulfilling the conditions? Are they actually making an effort to fulfill the conditions? So we really kind of go through that with the applicant on a case-by-case basis.
Judy?
Quick follow-up, about how many do you think we have that it would be under that dated aspect right now?
I think, Jeanette, we had pulled a few numbers.
So
have we
I
not?
believe the report itself, and let me just find the
I'm
the
thinking 3.
delegated authority report. So I
It's
believe the
not, it's not a
report
huge
identifies-
number. It's definitely less than 10. I know we have one that actually has a tribunal decision that says this is your final extension. Full stop.
So in the report, yeah, there are 5 plans currently on file.
Yeah.
I didn't list those 5 plans, but there are just 5 that are currently on
Yeah,
file.
there's one in North Frontenac and the rest are in South Frontenac. I would say, yeah, one of those definitely has a hard line drawn by the tribunal under them. The one in North Frontenac, it's, the plans that were done for it originally have probably passed the 15-year mark. And I think we had that conversation with the applicant at the time that we would give her this next extension because of COVID and everything like that. But were she to come back, that we would need to see some, progress on the fulfilling of the conditions, not just the sale of the properties.
So we are on top of it. Onward.
So just some other things that, since that have happened recently that maybe since the agenda went out. So other things under the delegation of authority, and again, this ties back to the land use policy. So in our land use policy, there is already a certificate of permission, which was delegated to staff. That's not a change that we're making. But we're also looking to change the size limit of an encroachment agreement from 1 meter square, which is really tiny, to 10 meters square, which really is a structure that falls under the building code. But these should also be incorporated into the delegation of authority bylaws. So with the committee's permission, before we actually put this up on the Engage Frontenac site, we should probably add those other 2 as well. They are identified in the land use policy, but it just gives us that one document that we can go to whenever we need to find a delegation of authority. That was the one. And then there's another one which we're seeing not a lot of, but we have seen it in the past, and we're also dealing with one now, and those are quitclaim deeds. So prior to amalgamation, the county did own county roads, and after amalgamation, some of the titles at the land registry office did not get changed. So there are some county roads, more so we've dealt with it in the city of Kingston. Gardner's Road is one of them, and I believe Joyceville Road is this next one. But there's still, when you go to the land registry office, it still looks like the county owns the property, but we don't. We don't have an interest in it, and we don't technically own it as well. So to fix those title changes at the land registry office requires that the county sign a quitclaim deed. So we're maybe looking at some form of wording that can perhaps delegate it to the CAO to execute quitclaim deeds for lands that are no longer in the county's possession. And we can come up with some specific wording that deal with former county roads that are in the former townships of the county that now fall within the city of Kingston, or even the townships themselves, because under the amalgamation order, even the county roads that were in South Frontenac, if they're still in our name, we don't own them. The township of South Frontenac owns them. So that's just one other thing that we're looking at. And of course, council as a whole is going to see a report coming to council this month as well, because we do have one coming forward now. Kevin, did you want to speak to that at all?
No, that's just what I was going to add, that this example, the quitclaim that we're currently dealing with, which is a piece of property in the city that we have no interest in, that'll be coming forward to council. But every time that pops up, instead of bringing it to council, I think we're recommending through this exercise that could be dealt with through delegated authority.
Are we in favor of that? Jerry and then Fred?
So I was going to change it, ask about something else, but we're still dealing with it, with this quick claim issue. I have no issue with it.
No, my question was about something else too.
Okay, let's give some guidance on the 2 issues that are before us, and that is that minor change in size and the quitclaim deeds. That makes sense to me. Jerry?
I think you should look at the 10 square meters. I believe it's now 15. You can build up to 161 square feet. That was changed about a year ago.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I think we talked about this, that I think it has been increased from 10 to 15 square meters in terms of not, so if that is the marker that you want to use where it doesn't require a building permit, that's perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be 10 meters squared, but just 1 meter square that's like a privy. That's the only thing
Yeah.
that's a very small privy, right? So, but we just thought of increasing that, like 10 square meters is a common shed size or something to that effect. Yeah, again, if you want to increase it from 10 square meters to 15 square meters to be in line with the OBC, the Ontario Building Code, from a staff perspective, I have no concern with that. We just, put
Then
10
let's
square
do it.
meters.
Judy?
Just a quick point on the quit claim piece. So we're talking about the old roads and that, not particular pieces of property, an old paramedic building or something like that. Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, so I think the scenario that we're dealing with right now, it's just a little piece in a road allowance or the old roadway that it's still, it's essentially an error in the land registry that they're trying to clean up so that this lawyer's client can move forward, but it involves us because our name is still on it in the land registry, and then there's probably going to involve the city of Kingston too, because it's now in their jurisdiction, so it's just cleaning up errors, yeah.
If it were real property, it would come to us. Okay.
Sorry,
Now,
so
Fred,
if
please.
it were real property, we would still own it. These are former county roads, which we just don't own anymore. But since amalgamation, we wouldn't have lost land if we ran paramedic basis if we owned that property.
Okay, Fred?
And just a lot of this is being sorted out because of amalgamation. I guess a lot of things happened during that time and there must have been a tremendous amount of work that had to be done to sort all of this out.
You see this gray hair? I was here. There's still the odd thing that rises its head that we didn't do. And certainly when you look at the former municipalities going into new municipalities, there's bylaws on the books that need to be fixed but we're getting to them bit by bit. Jerry?
Just as a comment, it doesn't have to be through amalgamation. We see it at the township every now and then where somebody wants something, and when they do all the background check, all of a sudden, oops, the county or the township owns this, but they own part of the township property, and we have to make that move. So it's just has to be done.
So the quick claim example that we're talking about, we're cleaning up an error from 1944. So it's an old error. It's been brought forward. We have to deal with it. We've also seen this as we've been purchasing and acquiring land for the KMP Trail. We've been cleaning up issues in the land registry as we head north. So it's sometimes common with the land registry.
Well, and land registry has changed, which has caused some problems as well. The way things are registered. Okay, let's get land titles, whatever. Continue on.
So I think that was it that we had included in delegation of authority, but maybe just to give one other thought, because we were looking at these based on that interdependency of those three policies. But as I mentioned earlier, as we're now going to that digital age and we're looking to streamline our processes, especially because we have a wonderful CAO that really is lean focused in streamlining processes, there may be other things that we find that can help expedite processes. So there may be other delegations that staff look at in the future that may come back to this committee. So it's not a closed book on this one yet. We're certainly going to look at everything that we do. It's not perhaps as prevalent at the county level because we don't provide certain services, but just, when you're thinking about this, even at your own township levels, that this really isn't the limit of delegation of authority, but it is intended to recognize, that we're in a modern age, that things move quickly, and how can we streamline processes? So the next one is the land use policy. So this was done back in 2014 after we had some requests for specific things. So it really is established to deal with requests by residents or developers or whatnot over county-owned land. So these are county-owned lands. We still do ensure that it's for public safety and in the public's best interest. It requires that any actions be the least intrusive when we're looking at this. And again, this was recognized at the committee last month when we heard that we want to make sure of the safety of residents on the trail, specifically for that one. And then it identifies various tools to grant access over county property. So for example, you have a certificate of license, you have easements or right-of-ways, which they're called. You have the actual sale, we have encroachments, and we have license of occupation. So there's a number of different things in that policy. And when we look at these, we try and find the best route of how to help that individual who needs over those lands. And then it sets out where the approval lies when granting these requests. So it's either, delegated to staff or council, and there are some recommendations that we're making there. And as well, I should note that it's not, you don't see it in the land use policy, but this is not free of charge. There is a fee for a recovery cost fee whenever we do this, and that is in the county fees and fees schedule user fee bylaw that the treasurer brings to council once a year. So there is a fee for that, and those fees do ensure that they are cost recovery as well. Oh, sorry, Councillor Fowler.
Yeah, so if you have something like the KMP Trail, does that restrict people, the general public, for entering on that property just by just going on it? Or does it restrict, or do they have to have a fee for the permit or anything like that? Yeah.
It's a public trail, and right now we don't ask somebody if they want to walk on the trail to get a license or a permission. So it's open to the public, right?
So
I'm concerned about that in the future, though.
Well, we pay good liability insurance to allow it.
So if I could speak to that, we're talking about fees when people ask, for example, for an easement over the trail to get to their property. So that is actually registered on title. It requires a survey. It requires lawyers to look at. So that's the fee that we're talking about. It's not just going and walking on the trail. It's fees associated with encroachment agreements or right-of-ways or license of occupation, those types of fees. Sorry, okay, so some of the proposed amendments that we're making here, and some of these have already been talked about under delegation of authority. So the one is changing that encroachment from 1 meter square. Now I understand we're changing this to 15 meters squared. It sets out that staff are only delegated the authority to approve easements equal. So these were the easements for the KMP Trail. So staff had spoke about this after the meeting, and we feel that a 20-meter width easement is more than sufficient when people are looking to cross over the trail to their property. So we're only asking for delegated authority for easements that are less than that, 20 meters or less. If somebody's asking for an easement greater than 20 meters, we are recommending that still do come to council. So that was just a slight change from, and I don't know what type of easement would be over 20 meters. Perhaps Richard could speak to that.
Sometimes you might enter the trail, 100 meters down the trail from where you want to go, and it's an L shape, and so that's an odd shape, but I would say it constitutes a consideration by council because it would be different than the normal thing that we're attempting to achieve. When someone approaches us, and even if they're slightly angled, the 20 meters will be able to accommodate that. But if they're going for like a long S-shaped crossing, there's a lot more consideration, and we should be bringing a report to council outlining that consideration and why we think we should or should not approve that.
Yeah, so that would be like, for example, if somebody has a driveway that touches the KMP Trail and they have to go down the trail 100 meters or so and turn up a road or something like, is that situation?
That's right, and that's for the right to cross. In some cases, we may need to consider using a different tool to allow people to travel linearly along the trail to access their properties, like their hunting camps or something like that. So like a permit. We haven't looked at that yet. We've just sort of let that happen. But as we move further north, there's more of that already takes place.
Thank you. Not wanting to get into an extended discussion on this, but this is more maybe for Richard's benefit. There was when Jeanette put everything out, there was a discussion that says you can cross the trail in only one place per property owner. And my issue is we should look at that because some of these in the north end are really large properties, like 2,000 or 3,000 acres, and they might cross in several places. It's just a comment for somebody to take it into consideration.
And again, when we get those applications or considerations, like we would act reasonably, and so in delegated authority, we're just taking all the things that make sense and are straightforward off of council's table, and the complicated ones we will keep on council's table.
The complicated ones, we get to make those tough decisions. That's why they pay us the big bucks.
Okay, so and then the last two, the bullet point 3 there is that there's going to be a couple of things added to the procedure. So the first one there, and this is quoted from the actual policy, the location of all easements will ensure free flow of movement and minimize the possibility of interference with the KMP trail or create an aggravant maintenance issue. So again, that language will be added, as well as the key one there that if an alternate means of access is available, either whether it's through connection to their lower tier road system or a private road or a fire road or a joint mutual entrance, we will direct people to that and not allow them over the trail. So the trail really is a last resort of crossing over to get to your property. It's not saying that you can't do it, but it really should be a last resort. So I'm not sure if there's any questions
Any
for
questions
that.
other than what we've asked? I think we're good.
So that really takes me to the end of this briefing. So I'll come and sit back down and then we can just, because there are some recommendations in the report, so I'll just come and sit back down for those.
Okay. So we are at corporate services, which is adoption of a sale and disposition of land policy for the county, and we have a motion.
Sorry, so just to quickly speak to that one, but yes, we do need a motion on the floor before I can speak to it.
Yes. So it's moved by Fred and seconded by Jerry. Be it resolved that Governance Review Committee approve the sale and disposition policy attached to this report as Appendix A. So we're going to discuss it.
So we've pretty much discussed it through the briefing. If there's any other questions, I'm certainly happy to answer them. But one of the things that I should note that is you're just basically approving what we were looking at, but we're not actually sending it to council yet. We're going to wait till all of these 3 policies are finished together so that the actual bylaw that goes to council will have this sale and disposition as an Appendix A and the land use as an Appendix B. But we're just really looking right now is did we capture everything that you asked for at the last meeting, or are things still missing?
And then this will be posted on the website for comments.
No, this has already gone for comments. If we make changes to it, it hasn't come down. If I
Okay.
can be honest, it hasn't come down. So there is that Engage Frontenac project up there. It had the sale and disposition. Once we iron out that you're happy with the delegated authority and land use, we're going to pop those 2 up today. But the sale and disposition won't come down. So if there are any other comments, we're certainly happy to bring those back to the committee.
Okay, Judy.
Okay, just because in 3.2 of the Schedule A, and that discusses how the minimum standard of what the advertising will be if we have a licensed real estate broker. But I know from previous discussion, our county's public notice policy doesn't have that same stringency involved in that with posting. I'd like to see that we do have that, because I don't want to have, land disposed of and residents come back saying, I had no idea that was happening. So I think at the bare minimum, we should be looking at signage, big signage, and that not just posting on our website. And a notice can go out on the social media because I know it's cheaper and that, but I really want to make sure, especially in these large rural areas, people do see signs so that they know that there's a land sale going on.
If it's in real estate, they will want a sign on it.
Yeah, so the ones that the county itself are going to look at without a real estate agent, I don't even, to be honest, I don't know what those really would be because we don't own land. Previously, they were the easements that required the 2 council meetings to go through. But if it's a great chunk of land that we're actually going to sell and it does go through a real estate agent, we leave it, the report itself does indicate that we leave it to them because they're the experts in selling. We're not experts in selling. We can certainly put a sign on. What would that sign look like? I don't know because we're not experts. So we would leave that to real estate agents. But in terms of land being sold outside of a real estate agent, I honestly can't think of an example off the top of my head.
So the only thing that I can think of hypothetically is the piece of land that we have our facilities on right now. And I don't know whether it's 5 acres that we own here or 55 acres. Oh.
The sign will be huge.
If,
It'll be
if
2 of
somebody
them.
could clarify how many acres we own, because that's. the
Can
only
bet if we're
piece-
going to sell this, there will be signs all over the place.
Well, it could be portions of and that, and there had been discussion whether or not the communal agency might buy something, supportive housing might buy something. It could be almost anything. So how many acres do we own here would be a question to the CAO.
I should know that because I've done the mapping on it before, but I'll get back to you on that. My comment is in line with what Jeanette was saying, that if we were to be selling or doing something with large chunks of property we do own, whether it's this site or whether it's a paramedic site, that's the only things that I can think of outside of the trail. We would be likely engaging with a real estate agent. They would have their signage, like it would be clearly marked on top of the whatever we use through the website or an online presence.
Okay, any other questions? Jerry?
So I have 2. One is my third-party comment from last time. I mean, we go to great lengths to in the discussion paper that went along with this, there was a nice little 3.5A or something. There was a nice little definition of third party. That's good enough for this, I think. It says, kind of clarifies what it is. I don't know why it's not in, because we have other standard definitions in there that are showing up in different bylaws, so why not put that in? It isn't going to make or break. I think it's something we should put in, though. 4.1B, and this is just semantics. The very last word is or what? The or should probably be deleted.
So sorry, can you just clarify your comment on third party again?
We should put a definition of third party in this. And in the discussion paper, you actually wrote that, I believe, and you have a really nice, neat definition in that discussion paper of what it is. Well, in your background stuff. Three 3.5A just comes to mind. I don't know. It could be right or wrong.
I think there's a prevention definition.
One changes based on committee consultation. Says staff are unable to adequately define third party but feel this section 3.5 of the proposed bylaw adequately identifies third party to leave no room for interpretation.
So are you looking at where I have on page under changes based on committee consultation? I have section 3.5 of the proposed sale of disposition identifies the third party as an additional party to an agreement already in place between the county and another entity. So do you want me to add that under definitions or
Yeah.
just,
As far as I'm concerned, that's perfect.
okay.
Judy?
Just a question, maybe Sonia Bolton might be the better one to answer it, because there's been so many changes in our Planning Act. The province has come up with third-party definitions in order to exclude extraneous groups from making complaints about things. So there must be a provincial definition regarding land use that is third-party defined.
Through you, Madam Chair. There are, I can't think of the exact definition off the top of my head, but essentially the intent of that definition was to limit the number of appeals that could go to the tribunal. I'm not sure that makes it a universally good, definition for all bylaws, but I can provide that if you so wish. But it basically, it's intended to exclude the average member of the public from making appeal.
And just because of the nature of what we're talking about right now is land sale and disposition, it seems like it might be one of your safer definitions to actually use.
Although if we have a buyer, he can be a third party. And really, the more third parties that want to buy something that we're selling, the better.
If they're trying to buy from us, that'd be a direct party in the contract, not a third party.
As
A
an
third party would be the
additional-
next door neighbor.
As an additional party to an agreement already in place between the county and another party. Yeah, okay. I think we're getting caught up on something that this definition will do it.
I think so too. I mean, when I read 3.5, I just said last time, what is a third party? I think I know, and here's a discussion we're having. So you can imagine a couple lawyers in a room arguing over 100 square feet of land or 100 square or 10 square meters, whatever it is. So something simple, straightforward, it fills the intent, we're good to go.
Okay, so Jeanette will bring something back.
Sorry, I'm looking under the Planning Act right now. There is no definition for third party. Under the definition section, I should clarify, there's nothing in the definition section that defines third party.
Okay, would it be in the tribunal documents and that? Because I know that there's a real restriction around third party now. And it would be nice to nail it down, in my view.
The term third party only shows up in 3.5. And it's actually fairly good or explained fairly well within the clause. I'm just saying, what is a third party? And I think the definition that Jeanette read earlier is good enough.
But just to clarify, though, I am going to add that as a definition under definitions, that a
Yes.
third party is what it says there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
perfect.
didn't know that either.
Okay,
You're getting your steps in.
Jerry.
I only have one issue here. And I think it's kind of warrants a discussion. So the director is the county's treasurer, right?
Say that again.
The director here is the county treasurer.
So we have
Ca-
director of planning.
The county solicitor must oversee the director and the carrying out of all responsibilities under this policy. That is 5.2. Okay, and under the definition, it'll tell you who the director is, right? And the director is person holding this title, the corporation director of corporate services / treasurer. But that person refers to or reports to the CAO. So is there a default responsibility? So if the treasurer messes up, it may not be this council, but another council down the road comes looking to Kevin for Alex messing up. I'm just saying, it's a possibility. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for it. I just must have been in a good mood when I read it.
So I can maybe speak to that. So section 5.2 talks about the execution of agreements. So all leases, agreements, and everything that go through the county, even now, even when they require council approval, do not get signed until they go through through Alex. It's just his role to look after all agreements. So, and if they need to go to legal, then it goes through Alex. And then just like one final point, Alex never messes up, ever.
He's kind of like the clerk, right? But But-
So your concern, though, is if Alex isn't there,
no, I'm concerned if something goes sideways
if he misses it.
and we look to Alex, we're more likely going to look to the CAO. But according to this appendix or this bylaw, there will be no direct line of responsibility. But over here in the reporting sequence, there is a line of responsibility. Alex reports to the CAO. So how do we cover that off? Or do we have to?
So just in terms of process, so Jeanette touched on it. So all of our agreements, all of our legal agreements and things like that, they all flow through Alex, but they also flow through me. So there's those checks and balances in place. But as a point of process here, Alex is the first review of those agreements.
You do realize I'm trying to protect the CAO's position here, right?
Oh, he's in there. Sure.
So just to speak to that, there's a number of things outside of this policy that we're going to get to in the next one that are delegated to staff. So for example, there's things that are delegated to the Director of Planning and Economic Development, but the bottom line is you still report through the CAO. So it's not just in this policy that it's the Director of Corporate Services that is giving a delegation here. We have them with a number of different staff. But it's still that reporting through the CAO. So if something goes wrong or goes sideways, you start there and then.
So at the end of the day, I answer to council.
Is that written down anywhere?
It's the gospel.
I know it's the gospel. I know it's the gospel.
He is our only employee.
Yeah.
That can't be added to the end of that sentence.
I can live with it. I just wanted to point that out, but
Okay, now that we've discussed that, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. All right. Moving right along to the next one. This is, helps if I put my glasses on. Review and proposed amendments to bylaw number 2016-0006, delegation of authority policy. And the motion is that the following draft amendments be incorporated into bylaw 2016-0006, delegation of authority policy, and that the draft policy be placed on the Governance Review Committee consultation 2025 project on Engage Frontenac for 21 days for public comment. That section 4, county strategic priorities, be deleted in its entirety and replaced with the guiding vision for Frontenac counties to be a thriving and sustainable county that balances economic growth, environmental preservation, and individual lifestyles, ensuring a vibrant and inclusive community for current and future generations in Frontenac. Our mission is committed to proactively promote and support managed growth in Frontenac County, leveraging its economic potential while preserving the county's distinct natural environment and respecting the diverse lifestyle choices of our residents. Strategic goal number 1 is develop a regional approach to overcome infrastructure issues and maximize infrastructure development opportunities. Strategic goal number 2 is contribute to the progress of sustainable economic growth and prosperity throughout the county. Strategic goal number 3 is strengthen quality of life through enhanced service delivery. And strategic goal number 4 is maximize administrative leadership within the county administration. That section 7, delegation under the Planning Act, be amended as follows. 1, that the words extension and be added before the word final plan in the first sentence. And 2, that a new I be added as follows. Council's power and authority with respect to all matters provided for by section 5133 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, chapter P1 as amended, related to the extension of approval of a plan of subdivision or a plan of condominium, be delegated to the Director of Planning and Economic Development, or in the absence of the director, to the Manager of Community Planning. 3, that 2 be amended to delete community planner at the end of the paragraph and replaced with manager of community planning. IV, that 3 be amended to add the words extension or draft approval or before the words final approval. 5, that 3 be amended to add the words extension of draft approval or before the words final approval. And 6 is that 3C be amended to add the words extension of draft approval or before the words final approval. And 7, that the remainder of that portion be renumbered accordingly. And that Schedule B be amended to add as follows, and that's in the box. And it's Director of Planning and Economic Development and Director of Planning and Economic Development delegated authority and the authority to execute an agreement.
So if I could just make, and that's a lot of wording, but it's just a technical thing that when I go to update the bylaw, I know exactly where to go in case I'm not here. We're going to use layman's terms when we put this up on the Engage Frontenac site. But just to do a quick typo clarification, under the encroachments, it's less than 15 meters squared, not 110.
Okay.
And that's based on the comments from the committee today. It was originally supposed to be 10, and the committee suggested 15 to fall in line with the Ontario Building Code. But we're also going to add in here the certificate of permission, which was already in the land use policy as delegated to staff. It just was not ever put into the delegation of authority bylaw, if the committee's okay with that. And then we're also going to add to the CAO the quitclaim. And we'll come up with some specific wording in terms of previous county roads that formed part of the former townships, which now lie within the district of either the city of Kingston, the township of South Frontenac, or I think we had county roads on one of the islands, or Frontenac Islands.
They didn't come to Central or North.
No, there was just county roads in the township of South Frontenac and Frontenac Island. So we'll just, if it's okay, we're just going to add those two, just to quickly amend it.
Okay?
And that
Good
was
with that.
from the discussions, if everybody was still okay with
Yes.
that. And again, this is extremely technical wording, but really all it is some housekeeping to change the strategic priorities, some housekeeping to change community planner to manager of community planning, and another housekeeping of where we have already authorized final approval, we're going to authorize as well extension of draft approval.
Okay, Jerry.
This is just a matter of my preference. When I went to review this and I got into the bylaw, if we could have a red line copy instead of a completed copy, I'm trying to follow this and it says renumbered and I'm going, where am I with all this? It became extremely difficult.
So I'll speak to that because the clerk had suggested we do that. And I had
Clerk
suggested.
would be right in my opinion.
I had suggested that might be too messy, but yeah, now that we know the preference and if that's the preference of the whole committee, we can, when we bring these things back in the future, we'll look to bring them that way.
Yeah, I think that might make it a little easier.
Judy?
Just the point again on the Schedule B in that in the line 1 with the request for the extension is no more than 2 years. It just, is there any way that we can tighten it up that how many times it can happen 2 years? So that we avoid, these long drawn out 2-year extension, 2-year extension, et cetera, that gets up 5 and 7 times.
I think we have to go site specific.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I don't think I could give you a specific number because it really is on a case-by-case basis. I mean, I think it's rare that we have these things sit for too long. Most of them, they come back for one extension, but there are a couple that are sitting and we have our eyes on them. And I think, there's that one that I mentioned in particular, I'm not sure we would recommend it. So we might be turning and bringing it to council to say, yes, they're only asking for 2 years, but we think their time is up, right? So it really is on a case by case basis.
And I think the logic has always been, if people are going to the expense of putting together subdivisions, and they've done as much as they can, given the circumstances of our world in the last 5 years, if we say no, chances are there's going to be no development. So I think we want to encourage development. So we keep looking at how can we keep moving this forward?
Through you, Madam Chair, there's also, we also have to keep in mind too, there's the opportunity, if we say no, they can appeal, right? And then we have to go to trial or we have to settle, and that's also time consuming and
And,
expensive.
and
so,
expensive.
Yes.
Judy?
It's just keeping a good eye to make sure that there aren't just speculators that come in and tie up a lot of land that could be developed by somebody else, and that's a real increasing risk, because we do have wonderful land that should be probably developed in that, and I can see could be, big money from Toronto or outside of the country coming along
I-
and tying up your land.
I can assure you, I've been involved in the extensions over the years, and that's not the case with these.
Through you, Madam Chair, it really is, and most of them are sort of small local owners. Sometimes people go through personal hardship and they can't, carry out their plans as intended. COVID really knocked a lot of people sideways. So we've had, most of the extensions we've had in the last few years have been because they couldn't do anything during COVID. They couldn't get any professionals. So yeah, and I mean, we are also headed into some uncharted territory with communal services, right? So we don't know, what's going to happen there, so.
Jerry?
So I'm okay with whatever's written here. But when you're close to a large urban center, a developer will become a speculator. They will buy it, put a little bit of money into it, develop it, and they'll sit on it. And meanwhile, the value of the land goes up. They get another renewal. The value of the land goes up. Then they may build on it, or they may sell it off, and that's where they make their money. But if you look long term, and this is one of the reasons we got into the municipal community services program, is that we have to look in the future. Where is this going to be? People are coming this way. And I was looking at some employment and education stats last night and whatever that the county put together and business services put together and so on. And Eastern Ontario is getting ready to be developed. Just look at Ottawa coming out towards Central Frontenac and North Frontenac. A house goes up for sale, a property goes up for sale, in almost every case it's sold within 3 or 4 weeks. People are coming.
Okay. On the motion that I read, and I'm not going to read it again. The mover and seconder were Fred and Jerry, I believe. Right, okay. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Had I known it was that long, I would have let Jeanette read it. Just too gung-ho here. Okay, corporate services review of proposed amendments to the County Frontenac land use policy. So we just need a mover and a second. So that's going to be moved by Judy and seconded by Fred. That the following draft amendments be incorporated into the land use policy and the draft policy be placed on the Governance Review Committee Consultation 2025 project on Engage Frontenac for 21 days for public comment. 1, that where delegated to staff, the size of the encroachment be increased from the current 1 meter squared to 15 meters squared. That under examples of a right-of-way, reference to standard trail crossings be added, which would be defined as trail crossings no wider than 20 meters that travel in a perpendicular fashion from one side of the trail to the other. 3, that the approval authority language for rights of ways be amended so that staff only be delegated the authority to approve easements equal to or less than 20 meters. Anything greater than 20 meters would require council approval. 4, that the additional language being added under the procedures. F, the location of all easements shall be approved by the Director of Planning and Economic Development or designate to ensure the maximum safety and free flow of movement as outlined in this guideline to minimize the possibility of interference with the KMP Trail and avoid the creation or aggravation of any maintenance problem. G, where an an alternate means of access is available either by connection to the lower tier road system, private road, fire route, or a joint mutual entrance, direct access onto the KMP trail will be denied. H, applicants shall use the prescribed application for easement form as provided by the County of Frontenac. Pretty much everything we've talked about. Any questions or comments on that? All those in favor? Carried. All right. That is the end of our meeting.
That was quick.
It's 11:05. Next meeting is March the 4th at 10 a.m. Does that work for everyone? So far? I think we have them in our agendas already, right?
I believe I have sent them out for the, right up until September.
Automatically in there.
There you go. She's reserved us. Yes. Yeah. Tuesdays seem to be the best days.
That's what came up when I had done the email.
Yes. Okay. Oh no, we can't meet on April 1st.
No, there's March 4th and then April 1st.
Yeah. Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, folks. We got a lot done. Jeanette and staff, thank you for all the efforts that you put into bringing this to us.
So this campus, Judy, 106.74 acres is what we own. The whole piece is 112.85, but there's a city portion that's owned by the Kingston Frontenac Housing. What's it called? Country Pines.
The apartments.